Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this inaugural lecture. My name is Stuart Humphreys. I'm the Director of the Institute for Advanced Studies, and I'm simply here to welcome you and encourage you to sign up for future meetings. So these lectures are part of our series of inaugural lectures, which are to celebrate both the achievements and the leadership of our new professors at the University of Lincoln. They're about celebrating what they've done and where they've come from, and they're very much open to everyone who may like to listen. That we try not to focus them on academic topics, but really describe where the work has come from and how people have got here. I'm absolutely delighted today to introduce Charbel for his lecture, but I do have a couple of housekeeping notes to give you first. So we are recording this session, and we will make that available on our website at lias.lincoln.ac.uk. All of the attendees' cameras and microphones will be turned off during the duration of the lecture. But there will be time for questions at the end where we can open up the chat, and you can ask Charbel questions about his talk. If you do have problems, please try and log in again. Occasionally, bandwidth means that you are forced to leave the lecture, but please try rejoining. That usually works. If you're having particular problems, do try and use Google Chrome, as that is often the best solution for this particular platform. So if you do enjoy today's lecture, which I'm sure you will, then please do keep in touch with us, and you're more than welcome to attend any of our further lectures, join our mailing list, or contact us to ask further questions. So that's it from the housekeeping side. As I said, I'm delighted that we have Charbel here today. I'm going to hand over to Professor Craig Marsh, who is the Pro-Vice Chancellor for the Lincoln International Business School, to introduce Charbel, and then I will return to help with the questions.
Stuart, thank you so much, and it's good evening, everybody. And it really is an honour, I have to say, to be able to introduce Charbel's inaugural lecture this evening. Of course, one of the advantages of this coming a good few months after Charbel actually joined us in Lincoln is that we've actually got to know Charbel pretty well over the last few months, and I have to say it's really rare to be able to say what an enormous pleasure it has been to be able to work with him over that time, and it would be remiss of me to say a little bit about what Charbel has contributed in that time, both internally and externally. In his time as global professor of sustainable supply chains here in the business school, and so Charbel, I think, internally has developed some amazing links with colleagues across the university in a really truly cross-disciplinary spirit, which has provided us with all sorts of opportunities, I think, to develop his area of expertise in conjunction with colleagues particularly in the College of Science. He's built up, I think, in a real true spirit of leadership, a really good team inside the business school in his area of specialism, and is providing such inspiration to my own colleagues in the area of logistics and supply chain in a number of different domains, actually. But that, I think, has also been particularly noticeable in terms of his time here. But I think also externally, and I think it is quite remarkable how well Charbel has built those links in the region, taking advantage of many opportunities of both growth and research and external influence in his area of expertise. And I'll just mention his work with the Midlands Engine, his work with the Towns Funds, particularly in Newark, the contribution he's made to the Freeport in Humber, and most recently contributions, to mention many actually, but to the Greater Lincolnshire Manufacturing Network. And so in a relatively short space of time, Charbel truly has made his mark both in the university and in the region. But of course, it's as his reputation, global reputation as a professor, that he comes here this evening. So let me just mention briefly, if I may, Charbel, not to embarrass you too much, but the background that Charbel has brought to us. So he has a PhD from the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. He's been, before he arrived at Lincoln, he was a full professor at Montpellier Business School in France, one of the top business schools in the country, apart from Lincoln, of course. He's worked as one of the youngest academics to have the habilitation, the ability to supervise PhDs, and he's still very young. It's astonishing what he's managed to achieve over this time. He has over 7,000 citations on Google Scholar. He's known as, and a reputation as in the top 2.5% globally for his research impact, according to ResearchGate. His areas of research, of course, are on smart sustainability, sustainable supply chains, the Industry 4.0 and its role in unlocking sustainability in supply chains, but also in terms of employers' contribution to sustainable supply chains. He's done sterling work in obtaining and developing research grants, both before he arrived at Lincoln and also while he's been at Lincoln. He's consistently publishing and is still publishing, even in the last few months, in first-tier scientific journals. Those including top ranking in the Financial Times, in the CABS ranking of business schools, and he publishes internationally with authors from over 20 countries around the world. So, astonishing reputation. It is an absolute honor to have him with us at the business school and at the university. And I will now shut up because I'm just the warm-up act, and I'll hand it back over such that we can hear from the star of the evening, Professor Charbel, José Chiappetta Jabbour.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stuart and Craig. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you to share my, academic trajectory and expertise. And it has been such a pleasure to work with you and under your leadership, which certainly enhances everyone's potential. So thank you very much. I will start sharing my slides with you, and I hope you can see the slides now.
All good.
Yeah. So thank you very much. It's great pleasure to be here with you today and with the participants to talk about the journey towards 21st century sustainable supply chains for a net zero society, trends, challenges, and opportunities. And during this presentation, I will be talking about my academic trajectory until arriving at Lincoln, and also the main contributions to the state-of-the-art literature. And I will be talking about collective, collaboratively built contributions with colleagues from around the world. So it's a great pleasure to be here. So this inaugural lecture is divided into 5 parts. So the first one is a little bit of my academic background and trajectory. The second one is about my research expertise. The third one, selected previous research in sustainable supply chains. Next, we will be exploring some exciting research projects started since I've joined Lincoln, and how with colleagues we have been able to apply globally recognized knowledge and methodology to local issues. And finally, the role of sustainable supply chains towards a net zero society, some trends, challenges, and opportunities, because I very much believe this is such an important topic for the future of universities and society. So regarding my academic background and trajectory, so I've received my formal training and degrees mostly from Brazil. So I received my PhD from the University of São Paulo when I had the opportunity of being supervised by Professor Almada Santos on maturity levels of sustainable manufacturing and the role of human and organizational factors. And my PhD was supported by FAPISP, which is an important research council in São Paulo. After finishing my PhD, I was hired by University of São Paulo and São Paulo State University, and I had an opportunity to spend time in Japan at the United Nations University to conduct a research project supported by FAPISP as well on the challenges faced by SMEs in Brazil and Japan to move towards green manufacturing. I had the pleasure to be supervised by Professor Pupim de Oliveira, who is now back in Brazil. And I received my habilitation from the University of São Paulo Business School as well on the business school's transformation towards sustainable management. So in my thesis, I explored how different disciplines within business school are being transformed to embrace sustainability with a focus on human aspects and supply chains and the new technologies. I had the opportunity to work for universities and business schools in Brazil, in France, in the UK, and the great pleasure of being part of the University of Lincoln as a global professor in sustainability in supply chains with a strong emphasis in new emerging technologies, sometimes called Industry 4.0 technologies, but understanding the adoption of new emerging technologies in the context of sustainable supply chains and from a management perspective. So it's a very exciting research area, and I'm very happy to be here. I had the great opportunity of developing my academic citizenship and dissemination of knowledge with great colleagues. I've been associate editor of the Journal of Cleaner Production and Sustainable Production and Consumption, and Latin American Journal of Management for Sustainable Development. But one of the most exciting activities is to, share knowledge and research with my colleagues from both the UK, Europe, and emerging economies. So I have many friends from India, Brazil, Malaysia, and the other countries who I think are online today, and to work as well with LIBS, under the leadership of Craig and the other colleagues, to deliver place-based research as well. So it's really truly exciting initiatives. Regarding research, my research is very interdisciplinary. So generally, my research is in the nexus of sustainable supply chains and management. And I explore a variety of organizational theories, such as natural resource-based view, stakeholders theory, contingency, institutional theory, AMO theory. I've been discussing this with a great scholar, one of my colleagues, Professor Renwick, and new theories such as organizational upper echelons, when we have the opportunity to address the future of sustainable supply chains by considering that, in organizations, the senior leadership teams and what they think about sustainability and sustainable supply chains really matter. So this is a new theory I've been exploring. So I'm very versatile in terms of working with different organizational theories. In terms of research methodology, I'm also passionate about mixed methodologies, the combination of qualitative studies and quantitative ones. And in terms of topics, I'm very versatile as well. I'm very much interested in cross-disciplinary topics which focus on global challenges rather than focusing on particular disciplines. So it has been my trajectory to really focus on a variety of theories, methodologies, and topics. My research expertise is focused on, of course, the relation between business and society. So most of the business schools around the world are very interested in how to enhance this relationship between business and society, how to have businesses for sustainable development. And within this relationship, I've been focusing on the concept of sustainable value creation. So this is a very important concept in my trajectory, and it comes from a award-winning paper published by an Academy of Management journal. And it says that a more sustainable firm is underpinned by sustainable value creation, which happens when appropriate consideration of global challenges happen by new business lenses to simultaneously develop and deliver environmental, social, and economic benefits to stakeholders. So, of course, many companies and organizations face challenges, but the way you approach those challenges to simultaneously deliver environmental, social, and economic benefits can create sustainable value. And I bring this graph, this information that's really important in my trajectory. It's from an MIT global survey with CEOs around the world. And it's very interesting. 90% of the CEOs consider sustainability strategy as very important. But just 25% of those companies have a business case for sustainability. So you have here a significant gap between considering sustainability important and having a proper sustainability business case. And this gap, my research focuses on how to reduce this gap through attention to human factors, management factors. I'm talking about top management support, negotiation, training skills, and the adoption of the right sustainable and greener technology, new products, new processes, and new technology-enabled business models. In my research, I generally have sustainable supply chains as background. Why? Because as Christopher says, the competition, organizations are competing through supply chains. So supply chains compete, not companies. And more important, if you want to consistently enhance the sustainability of the industrial sector, you have to focus on supply chains and not on isolated firms. So supply chains offer the context to develop more impactful research. And this expertise has focused on sustainable development goals, mainly number 9, industry innovation, 12, responsible consumption and production, and 13, climate action. Of course, supply chain is we can understand supply chain management as the function which coordinates the movement of goods and data from suppliers to final customers. You can have more domestic supply chains when the flow of these materials and information happens within the same country. But nowadays, most of the supply chains are global supply chains. When we have a dynamic network of globally distributed companies, and just imagine how many companies are part of global supply chains and how much environmental and social impacts they generate as we speak. Within supply chain, my interest has been in green supply chain management. So the first articles in green supply chain management were published in the 90s, when the perception was that greening individual firms should be replaced with the idea of greening the entire supply chain. And in 1 decade later, green supply chain was a dominant topic of research in management. And now we know green supply chain can be achieved through the adoption of best practices, green management internally within firms, eco-design and life cycle management, green purchasing and green supplier selection, cooperation with customers to generate ideas, reverse logistics and investment recovery. But discussing the greening of supply chains is not enough. There was a missing link in this body of knowledge that now is being addressed through an emphasis in sustainable supply chains. So the discussion is no longer only about greening supply chains, but how to achieve truly sustainable supply chains. And when we talk about sustainable supply chains, we have to include stakeholders' engagement. I'm talking about how supply chains are dealing with challenges regarding the workforce, local community development, society challenges, consumers, and the other value chain actors such as the government. And the question nowadays is how to build up sustainable supply chains when we have emerging digital technologies, circular economy principles emerging, and the transition to a net zero society. So how can we merge and create synergy among these concepts and practices? This is an area that's very much in my interest. I have selected some previous research, and this previous research are generally papers which have been ranked in the top 1% of their fields in terms of citations, or have been among the most downloaded papers in the journals they were published. Just to give you an idea of what we have done, systematized the contribution of my colleagues and I and leads in this area of sustainable supply chains. For example, we have discovered that different companies in a supply chain can be in different maturity levels of sustainability. And this is a question of lack of consistency, which in the end damage the sustainability of the entire supply chain. We have discussed the central role of focal companies. So focal companies are companies which have the bargaining power in a supply chain, and they play a central role in ensuring the necessary governance to promote sustainability in a supply chain. For example, if we want to move towards a hydrogen-based economy, we will have to engage focal companies in this debate. We have discovered that sustainability criteria should be part of key technical areas in companies, engineering and procurement, but also have have the support of the senior leadership team, we have found that sustainability proactive companies and supply chains, they are capable of blending the adoption of more technical practices such as eco-design, but also they have been able to motivate their workforce to engage with sustainability transition. And we have also found that focal companies generally work closely with their first-tier suppliers, the immediate suppliers, but most of the environmental and social impacts of supply chains are generated by other tiers, lower tiers, suppliers of suppliers of suppliers, and those lower tier suppliers tend not to be well equipped in terms of sustainability and supply chains best practices. So I have selected, as I said, some papers to exemplify our research. So this first paper is about greening the supply chain through the selection of greener suppliers. And our research with a colleague from Denmark found that there are 4 main green supply chain practices that companies were using to select greener suppliers, such as the commitment of their senior management team, green product design, compliance with legal and environmental requirements, and the less toxic product design. More recently, and with colleagues from Brazil, Chile, and France, we discovered that the adoption of low carbon operations management is not straightforward. We discovered that there is heterogeneity in the ways that different companies perceive the issue of low carbon practices. We found that while firms studied were motivated to reduce CO2 emissions, we also found that companies were not adopting a full range of low carbon operations practices. So many practices regarding low carbon production, products, and logistics have not been adopted, which, makes the transition to a more sustainable and net zero society more challenging. In another paper, we analyzed the biodiversity intensive sustainable chains in Brazil, such as agribusinesses and the cosmetics industry. And we found that companies are still at different stages of maturity in relation to low carbon management. And we found that the best companies in this area were the same companies who invested a lot in training and skills development for new technologies, green technologies. So once again, the role of training and so much potential for universities. In another paper, and this paper has been very appreciated by colleagues, we integrate Industry 4.0 technologies, also called emerging technologies, and environmentally sustainable production practices. So in these papers, as you can see here, we have a number of research propositions on how to integrate Industry 4.0 technologies and green products, green manufacturing, and green supply chain management. Something that is very concerning, as I have said, is how to ensure that supply chains consider the suppliers of suppliers of suppliers in an appropriate way when dealing with sustainability. So in this paper, we worked with Professor Joseph Sarks, who is probably the number one researcher in green supply chains, to propose a framework on how to integrate and a framework to understand the challenges of building up more sustainable, low-carbon supply chains from a multi-tier perspective. And finally, during the pandemic, I worked with colleagues on a survey to understand the main challenges supply chains in the automobile and airline industries faced to remain resilient. So we try to highlight lessons learned from the pandemic. And it was very interesting because we found that the automobile industry perceived that the best way to mitigate the challenges caused by COVID was to develop localized suppliers and to advance automation, while the airline industry tried to get some, certainty and invested a lot in business continuity plans and strategy to understand the future, to try to forecast, the new normal after COVID. Both sectors perceive the big data analytics as a key resource to reduce uncertainty, and cooperation with stakeholders in supply chains was key to overcome the challenges and to accelerate the use of digital technologies. And now I would like to celebrate with you something that is meaningful to me, projects I've been developing with colleagues since I joined Lincoln. And as you know, Lincoln is committed to applying globally recognized research, methodology, topics to enhancing the quality of life and sustainability of the Midlands region and Lincolnshire. And since I've joined Lincoln, I've worked on a number of projects I would like to share with you. So number one, it's an ongoing project with Professor Mini from the School of Engineering, and it's about supply chain management in the UK aerospace industry. Number 2, it's a Midlands Engine project on the resilience of the UK Midlands food supply chain during the pandemic. I've also got a project funded by Newton Fund Global Challenges, small grants to visit the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, to work with Professor Frank Alejandro, and I'm also working on green innovation in Qatar and the challenges to move towards a net zero society in Qatar. But I would like to highlight this Midland Engine project number 2, and share with you a bit more of details about this project, because I really enjoyed this project, and this is the kind of research that I want to keep developing. So I must recognize that this project has been successfully concluded because of the help and support of my brilliant colleagues. And we had the opportunity of working with both academics and non-academics in this commissioned report. And this project is called Akursky, Anti-COVID-19 Capabilities Underpinning Resilient Supply Chains Framework, evidence from the food supply chain in the Midlands Engine Pan region. So the research background, I will be very brief here, is that somehow the UK food supply chain was able to cope with the pressures put on it by the COVID pandemic. So our study provided insights into capability factors underpinning the resilience of the food chain. And the research findings helped build an original portfolio of resilience capability factors called now Akursky. So the research question of this project was, what is the portfolio of supply chain resilience capabilities that, kept our food supply chain alive during the pandemic? And we used as a research framework, we used the most cited paper in resilient supply chains published by Petit and co-authors. Our analytical focus was on the Midlands Engine and the food sector. In terms of research methodology, we used the highly cited 14 capability factors for supply chains suggested by Petit and co-authors. And based on this framework, we interviewed 20 experts and supply chain practitioners in the Midlands region, and we analyzed the data through the NVivo software. I will let you know that out of 14 capabilities suggested by Petit, found the top 5 resilience factors. We found organization, which means organizational innovation with a strong emphasis on agile and pragmatic human resource management. This was the key resilience factor capable of giving resilience to the food chain. Anticipation, so somehow, companies were considering a no-deal Brexit. They were getting ready for that. They were adopting best practices regarding business continuity planning, risk assessment, and somehow this helped those companies to face COVID. Adaptability. So, as one of the participants of the research said, during the COVID pandemic, the first wave, every day was Christmas in terms of, sales volume and difficulties to manage the supply chain. Flexibility in order fulfillment, so rapid shift from food to go and food services to new markets. So many companies started selling food directly to customers through online channels. And flexibility in sourcing. So identification of alternative, pre-approved, pre-audited new regional suppliers. Based on this, we proposed to Midlands Engine this full version of our framework called Akursky. So for each one of the 5 capabilities, we identify the best practices and the enablers that are capable of ensuring that companies are resilient and will be able to face, future disruptions. We also found that SMEs really need more support, from their supply chains, from the government, to be as resilient as the larger companies. But very interesting, found companies considered not only COVID as a main challenge, but they mentioned the digital transformation of supply chains as one of the biggest challenges they are facing. What is happening? Major players in the food chain, focal companies, logistics firms, are leading the transition to a digitally enabled food chain as consumers choose to shop online. But how to deal with this transformation is still a challenge. And very interesting, companies we interviewed were equally interested in the transition towards a net zero supply chain. They said that, supermarkets, food, large companies in the food chain and consumers and the government are very much concerned about the transition to a net zero society, but many supply chains and the companies need help and support to first understand what is the meaning of net zero in their context, and second, how to deal with the transition towards a net zero supply chain. We have published the final report. It's available on the Midlands Engine website. And now, to conclude, I'm sure this topic, the role of sustainable supply chains in the transition towards a net zero society, will be part and has been part of my academic trajectory. And it's brilliant, that Lincoln is working on topics such as hydrogen society and mapping its skills to deal with the challenges and opportunities of a net zero society. And this topic will be part of my trajectory, and I would like to work with colleagues on this topic. As you know, the UK government has a 10-point plan for green industrial revolution. So we are talking here about, significant challenges, such as point 2. So how to implement hydrogen based solutions when we consider supply chain. What about green finance and innovation? So net zero refers to achieving a balance between the amount of greenhouse gas emissions produced and the amount removed from the atmosphere. And how can we include sustainable supply chains debate in this transition towards a net zero society? How to unlock truly sustainable supply chains based on the 10 points after the pandemic? So this is a challenge I'm very keen to explore with my colleagues. Once again, we should consider that supply chains compete and not companies. And that if we want to have more low carbon companies, we will need to invest in low carbon supply chains. There are questions here that I will be exploring over the next months. For example, a key question is stakeholders collaboration through supply chains. So I believe that supply chains are the bridge between the government's policy and the net zero transformation of individual firms. So I very much believe that a discussion about net zero supply chains will be relevant in this debate. Net zero technology, we talk a lot about this, but what about the adoption of new cutting-edge green technologies in supply chains? What I call net zero mindset. What are the skills and knowledge to support the sustainable transformation of each organization in a supply chain? How to develop and keep developing globally recognized research capable of addressing local issues. And how to keep in mind that a systems perspective is necessary to conduct truly interdisciplinary research projects. And I'm very happy that at Lincoln, I've been working with colleagues from different institutes and colleges on truly interdisciplinary projects. Some useful references, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity of being part of this one community. Thank you.
Thank you, Charbel, for what was a fascinating insight into everything, I guess, that we consume, right, and how it's affected by social factors and environmental change. I thought that was really fascinating. Thank you so much. We do have a little time for questions, and if you wish to stay on, we can deal with those. Please do just type questions into the chat, and then I will put those to Charbel. So I guess in order to get things started, I mean, the obvious question for me is where do you see things? Are we going to reach the net zero sustainable supply chain, or is something going to happen that means we change all of our targets again. Is that something you think you can comment on?
Thank you very much, Stuart. I believe that we have the technology, but we have to invest in, a net zero mindset, and to consider that supply chains are nowadays very long and globalized. And, you have to work with a multi-tier perspective. Suppliers of suppliers of suppliers, sometimes far away from the focal company to achieve net zero. But, I'm an optimist. So I believe we have the technology. We have to work on the skills, knowledge, and mindset now.
Thank you. So it's much more of a social change than the technological change we might have assumed.
Yeah, in management, we have this social technical perspective and systems perspective that when you change technology, you have to change behavior. And I think this will be an important perspective to understand behavioral changes. And for example, I mentioned upper echelons theory, which says that, the future of an organization depends on the background of the senior management team. So if we have people in business concerned about, net zero society, so I see a way to move forward with this transformation.
Great, thanks. So we have a question from Anil. What are your thoughts about integration of AI and net zero? Oh, I think you're muted again.
Yes, so let me see if I find the question. Yeah, this is a very good question, Dr. Anil. Thank you very much. Yeah, we know that artificial intelligence will facilitate sustainability, will speed up sustainability, mainly the green dimension of sustainability. So artificial intelligence has been applied to recycling, reverse logistics, and to solve issues towards green management. The question is, and about it, is the ethics and the social impacts of artificial intelligence in supply chains as well. So it's a good area of research. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I think we probably need to wrap up given the time, but please could you, I can squeeze one in, go on then. Susanna asks, if I could, it stays still. What are your thoughts about resilience and sustainability?
We sometimes use the term sustainability as a synonym for resilience. But I can see that, after this pandemic, companies have been investing in resilience management through business continuity plans. And a good part of this is dedicated to the safety of the workforce and how to ensure that suppliers can deliver on companies' strategy. So I think that, the search for resilience will help achieving, more sustainable supply chains.
Cool. So I'm loath to stop now that we have more coming in. So Luis Alberto asks, when did the COVID-19 pandemic start to demonstrate a fragility in supply chains?
Yeah, I think a COVID pandemic highlighted how complex supply chains are now, how globalized. If you see now, the US government is addressing, gaps and shortages in their supply chains, key supply chains. And suddenly supply chain is an everyday topic, in news, newspapers. So I think we will have much more interest from students and researchers about supply chain because COVID has highlighted that we really depend on this to keep our lifestyles, and we live in a globalized world.
Indeed. I think we will have to leave it there. But if you do have further questions for Charbel, I can see a couple more in the chat. Please feel free to contact him directly or email us at lias@lincoln.ac.uk, and we'll be happy to pass that on. So I'm just left with asking you to join me in what has become a slightly strange silent thank you through the chat. There are lots and lots of congratulations coming through already, but if you could just join me in the chat in thanking Charbel once again for such an amazing talk. Thank you so much, Charbel.
Thank you very much, Stuart, Craig, and all the audience and the friends, and Andrew, I know you're here. Yeah, thank you. And Lauren for the support.